Who's going to have a bigger bounce back? Russell Wilson versus Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, or Deshaun Watson versus the Patriots?
Well, I would feel very confident starting either one of these quarterbacks this week. Russell Wilson, of course, is going to be my pick. Obviously, what happened against the Los Angeles Rams was not pretty. Probably cost a lot of us weeks. Not me, though. I still beat Tokyo Rose, my buddy, who tried to ruin me by auto-picking my team. But whatever, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about Russell Wilson going out there and putting it back together. This was a great matchup. We obviously saw these two teams play previously this season when Tyler Lockett had his 50-point game. He didn't even get DK Metcalf involved in that contest. So I really do believe that this week that they have something devised. This is the perfect opportunity for him to go out there, especially when you have a bad game. You don't want a full week of practice. You want to just get back out there and start throwing the rock. The good thing about Russell Wilson is that he's an amazing player. He doesn't need a full week of practice. He can show up on Thursday night, put up 30 points for you. So I really love Russell Wilson this week.
I agree. Plus, I feel like Russ is going to want a little revenge moment since he lost to Kyler Murray the last two times that these teams played. So I'm just a petty person in general. I have a little petty streak in me.
Of course.
So if I was Russell Wilson, I'd be like, you know what? You know what, Kyler Murray and Arizona Cardinals, I'm throwing for 500 yards and I'm going to put up 40 plus fantasy points. But hopefully his receivers eat tonight as well, because it's always a question. Is it going to be a Tyler Lockett game or a DK Metcalf game? I want both of those guys to be incredible. I think all three of them will put up some good numbers tonight.
DK was very close to getting into the end zone in the last game against the Cardinals. And he had that sick play where he tackled, was it Budda Baker from behind? So he should have gotten fantasy points for that. You know, like that should be something where you're like, you get fantasy points for that. But I expect DK Metcalf to be much better this week.
All right, let's do another head-to-head bounce-back competition. James Conner versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, or Mike Davis versus the Lions. As a reminder, Christian McCaffrey is not playing this week, so Mike Davis is the lead back for the Carolina Panthers. Which guy will have a bigger bounce back?
Well, I'm going to go with Mike Davis. And I think that this is a perfect opportunity for him to get back into our good graces after not quite, well, I mean, he was on, I mean, like Christian McCaffrey was back, so he wasn't around. But when Christian McCaffrey has not been on the field, he's averaged over 16 fantasy points per game. He was still pretty good while McCaffrey was there, but once he's the solo guy, obviously it just stands to reason that he's going to be a little bit better. He's going up against the Detroit Lions, who've allowed the most fantasy points to running backs this season. They've allowed the most touchdowns to running backs this season, 18 of them. So I really do like this as an opportunity for Mike Davis. And you know what? You got to wonder, you know, the bye week for the Carolina Panthers is week 13. Is this something that they're going to extend? Because I know the trade deadline is coming up, and I know a lot of people are deciding, you know, what to do. If you have a good fantasy team and you have some depth, find the person that has Christian McCaffrey and see if they're frustrated enough to just deal him. And similarly, you know, that's just kind of what I'm looking at right now. And so, you know, just a little bonus nug there for you, Kim.
Ooh, look at you. You're a wealth of fantasy knowledge. You're giving people all of the nugs. And later on in the show, speaking of trade deadlines, we're going to have Michael F. Fantasy Florio come and give us some guys to trade for and trade away. So that's a good little nug. I also agree. I think it's going to be Mike Davis. I'm hoping he gets back in our good graces. We also saw what the Detroit Lions allowed last week when they played the Washington football team. Both J.D. McKissic and Antonio Gibson had huge games. So crossing our fingers that Mike Davis can do it this week. All right, one more bigger bounce back. Michael Thomas versus the Falcons, or Will Fuller versus the Patriots. I want to go first on this one because I'm fired up on this one. Why are people acting like Michael Thomas is not a good fantasy football player? I understand there's been drama. He's been hurt, yada, yada, yada. Michael Thomas was a wide receiver #1 back in 2019 in fantasy football. He's going to be able to do that again. There you see Drew Brees throwing them the ball. That's not going to happen. Drew Brees is out for the next few weeks because he got banged up in week 10, dealing with some rib injuries, collapsed lung, all that sad jazz. Praying for you, Drew Brees. That means Jameis Winston is going to start at quarterback. Back in 2019, when Jameis Winston was a starting quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he led the NFL in terms of passing yards per game. You think he's not going to be able to do that yet again this season against the Atlanta Falcons and that defense that has been abysmal, and that he's not going to want to feed Michael Thomas. If you think that that is a scenario, I'm done with you. Michael Thomas is going to have a huge bounce back game. I'm over the slander. I'm done. I'm fired up. I'm hyped up. Michael Thomas Huge bounce back game. I think he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver in terms of fantasy football. I feel like that was a Kimmy rant. I'm like mad. I'm like, stop with the Michael Thomas stuff. Stop it.
What Kimmy said goes double for me. Coming up next on Fantasy, but no, I agree with you with Michael Thomas. People are being ridiculous about it. And I think that this is another situation where over the next couple of days or the next couple of hours, if you can go out there and try to swing a deal for Michael Thomas with somebody who's very frustrated about him, I would absolutely go and do that. But I did want to take an opportunity right now to talk a little bit about Will Fuller, because I like him this week against the New England Patriots. And I know that Bill Belichick likes to go out and shut down the opposing team's best player. But the Houston Texans also have a former Patriot in the name of Brandon Cooks. And if Bill Belichick is as petty as I believe he is, it's going to be Cooks that is taken out of this game. Not that they're going to just let Will Fuller do whatever he wants, but he kind of does that anyways, because over the last 7 games, Fuller has scored at least 12 fantasy points in 6 of them. 5 of them, he had more than 15. So he's a very good player. They find ways to get the ball into his hands. Even last week, in that dumpster fire of a game against the Browns, where the weather was like Ice Planet Hoth, Will Fuller was modestly, like he was the only guy who was actually sort of playing on that whole team. Like nobody else was doing well for the Texans, but Will Fuller was at least out there doing something. So I feel very confident with him. But Kimmy, like don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong. Michael Thomas, bigger bounce. Michael Thomas, wide receiver 1 this week. I don't want to listen. I'm just telling you, but Will Fuller's also going to be good this week as well.